welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm April Knight and you're watching News 2 Week in Review. Topping our stories, residents of Estate Nara on St. Thomas saw progress in a project that has been dead for many years, but now the so-called bridge to nowhere is seeing some traffic, and Governor Kenneth Mapp himself took the first ride across. In a radio show, the governor discussed the Turpentine Run flood mitigation project and addressed fears of some residents over the government exercising eminent domain. Here's more.
The commissioner said I can't open the bridge unless I test the weight, so they want me to drive across the bridge, make sure that it could hold the weight. If I make it across, then everybody gonna be safe. So, you know, okay. I have to give up one for the team. We're not coming in and coming by eminent domain and taking away people's houses and putting them out of the area. Folks are aware that along the gut, the wall of the gut, there are a number of homes, and you could see even one of them is like half in the air where the waters in Irma and Maria washed it out. And the plan is for property and procurement, and when we say the Attorney General, because the Attorney General is the negotiating arm for the government, we have to sit with the property owners, identify the properties that we need for the flood mitigation program, buy those properties out, and help the families relocate to new homes. And so this is going to be a program with the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, the Department of Justice, and the Department of Property and Procurement, because I was a little surprised when a reporter asked me last week that the bridge was nothing but aesthetics and did we really need it? And it was a reporter from St. Croix, so they didn't have any reference point to understand the amount of water and the damages that go through there. And so I'm going to be meeting with the residents of the Estate Nara. I've asked the administrator to put a meeting together, and I will sit with the community to have this discussion, and I will bring Darrell Griffith, Attorney General Walker, and Commissioner Bao with me so that we can have a good discussion, because we're not buying out all of the homes, but the point is to make the neighborhood safe, to do the flood mitigation plan so that the water that comes down out of all through Brookman Drive and that comes out of the hills from Tutu, that water makes its way safe to the ocean, and that we're not flooding out homes and having people in danger. And you know, and I know that during Hurricane Frederick and David, a number of people died out in those homes in Estate Nara. And we want to make sure that we don't have a repeat of that. So that bridge that was built there is a phase of the flood mitigation program at Estate Nara. But now that the Army Corps of Engineers has received the funding, that $34 million project, the basketball court and all of those areas are going to be relocated and built in a different area, because all of that encompasses what that flood mitigation plan is that Public Works and the Army Corps of Engineers has been working on since David and Frederick, but simply never had the money to fully implement. And now that because of Irma and Maria, we have gotten all of the funds that we need for that particular project. So
Meanwhile, an employee at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles is in hot water after the Office of the Inspector General revealed a report that stated that the employee, an office manager, was stamping registration documents without inspections and putting the name of an inspector into the computer even when there has been no inspection. According to the OIG's report, the investigation began when BMV Director Lawrence Olive called the Inspector General's office in late May, saying an office manager had improperly processed vehicle registrations. Olive reported that a company employee came to the St. Thomas inspection looking for a particular inspector to stamp documents for vehicles to get VI vehicle registrations. Olive and a second inspector told the company employee that they could not stamp the documents until the vehicles were brought to the inspection lane. On May 21st, Olive saw packets for 13 of that same company's vehicles for registration. Each of those packets had had a road tax clearance letter and a BMV inspector stamp, but none were initialed by an inspector. Olive spoke to both inspectors who both denied inspecting the vehicle or stamping the documents, and that was how that investigation began. The name of the employee was not released, but Chief of Investigations Nicholas Peru recommended administrative action and removing the person from responsibility over that process. New security measures were also recommended, several of which Olive agreed to, but he also said that the 30-day time frame for administrative action had expired. In continuing a spate of press conferences, Governor Mapp also called for a presser earlier this week at Government House in Christiansted, touting his administration's performance on tourism. Tourism Commissioner Beverly Nicholson Doty gave updates on how the territory's tourism industry is recovering. Michelle Page of the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, she also gave ideas on how the Virgin Islands can enhance its tourism product. Here's more from that press conference.
It is an honor for us to be at this point today. We have been working specifically with Disney Cruise Lines that had offered their expertise over the last few years. They've been working with us even more in terms of how do we make sure that St. Croix is seen as its own destination. And you know, my roots are in Frederiksted, so you know, I really say this with all the love for the Virgin Islands, but St. Croix doesn't want to be St. Thomas, and we don't need another St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. We need St. Croix to be represented, and our culture, our history, our food, these are things that passengers are looking for.
We're working with the private sector, both on St. Croix and on St. Thomas, to make each of the islands different, distinct. Tell us the story. You know, yes, passengers have been coming to both islands for a long time, but one of the things that we found out in the economic impact study is only 31% of the passengers have not been here before. That means that 69% of cruise passengers have experienced your destinations. Give them a reason to be excited. Give them a reason to get off the ship. Give them a reason to experience the people.
Meanwhile, lawmakers voted on Tuesday to increase the maximum amount that the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority can borrow from $500 million to $750 million. The bill heard before the Senate Finance Committee on Tuesday would amend current statute that authorizes WAPA to borrow money and classify it as debt up to $500 million. In a letter proposing the bill to Senate President Myron Jackson, Governor Mapp said the bill aims to give WAPA the critical flexibility that it needs to fund capital programs and operations. WAPA officials did stress that raising the debt ceiling does not mean it can borrow money above its existing contractual obligations. WAPA CEO Lawrence Kupfer said, however, that failure to raise the debt ceiling may cost ratepayers even more. According to Kupfer, the current rates already take into account some projected savings from the lease of 2 higher efficiency generating units from a company called Agreco LLC. That is projected to reduce the authority's costs by $18 million a year. The project is scheduled to go online in January of next year, but consumers have already begun seeing savings in July. So if the debt ceiling isn't raised, WAPA might have to increase its rates yet again. Coming up next, a taste of the Puerto Rico Virgin Islands Friendship event over the weekend, plus highlights from the AARP Gubernatorial Forum. We'll be right back. Welcome back. 7 gubernatorial candidates went toe-to-toe on Saturday on St. Croix for the 2018 AARP Gubernatorial Forum. Tune in to VIA for re-airs of the entire event, which lasted almost 3 hours. Moderated by Holland Redfield, the forum tackled issues important to some 20,000 AARP members in the Virgin Islands. Here are snippets of the candidates' response on how to save and stabilize GERS.
The GRS is insolvent. It is paying out more than it is taking in. It has an unfunded liability estimated as high as $4 billion. Some may agree or disagree. First question, and it's a two-part question. What is your solution to stabilize the system? And the second part, what is your long-term plan to save the system?
First of all, I think when you review the GRS system, we must recognize that the GRS system is an independent instrumentality. An independent instrumentality that consists of board members that serve on that board. We would first have to establish that the government must pay the contributions into the system on time. That's number one. In terms of stabilizing, it is about us establishing public-private partnerships for the purpose of generating revenues, a portion that can be dedicated to the GRS system.
No one can say that we have a definitive approach to solving GRS because we didn't get here overnight. So our approach is this. Upon election, when we develop our transition teams, we will develop a transition team specifically for GRS. We will bring in the executive branch, the judicial branch, the legislative branch, the members of the independent instrumentalities that pay into GRS to identify what the options are.
We are different than the states. We get to keep our own income taxes. So when we pay GERS money out, a portion of it immediately comes back to the government as taxes. That's GERS money. It needs to stay in the GERS. If you get a $3,000 payment, you might pay $1,000 back to the government in payments. That $1,000 is GERS money that needs to stay in the GERS. That's $70 million a year in payments and that the GERS is currently making to the government. That accounts for over $1 billion of our lost money.
Plan sponsor has not paid on time. And so that to stabilize would be the first thing that my administration would do. We need to pay our bills on time, not just GRS, but all the bills that we need to pay. The long-term solution, well, we have to identify that recurring funding source that can actually pay into directly to the GRS. And sometimes we often in the legislature don't know the true numbers that the government has of funds in its coffers.
Go to the Department of Interior and the Department of Treasury and ask to borrow the $2.8 billion that is the unfunded liability. Without getting a loan and paying off that unfunded liability, you're going to have a very problematic pension system.
The first one, to secure the payment for our retirees so they don't have a reduction. And the second one, to make sure that those hardworking people who are in there now, that they get a retirement when they decide to leave government.
Raise the cap on taxation of salaries. Government employees do not pay contributions above $65,000 a year. We move that to the same level of salary at the Social Security system, which is $128,000. We raise the level of benefit from $65,000 to $75,000 to give those persons something for their extra contributions.
Make sure you tune in to VIA Channel 4 and 504 for reruns of the AARP Gubernatorial Forum. Meanwhile, a bit of bad news for Cruisians. JetBlue Airways will no longer fly between San Juan and St. Croix beginning January 8th, according to the Department of Tourism. A JetBlue memo sent to the Tourism Department stated that despite connecting traffic from the mainland and via San Juan, JetBlue's 100-seater aircraft has proven to be larger than necessary for the market. JetBlue customers will still be able to book flights to and from St. Croix through the airline's code-share agreements with partner airlines, including Cape Air and Seabourn. They offer up to half a dozen daily flights via San Juan, according to JetBlue. The Virgin Islands Puerto Rico Friendship Committee in both St. Croix and St. Thomas have been busy in the last several weeks. They have the same goal, to highlight the importance of ties between the two American territories in the Caribbean. On St. Croix on Sunday, hundreds came out to participate in a parade that showcased both cultures, featuring music and dance, as well as some lively revelers representing various causes. On St. Thomas, the VI Puerto Rico Friendship Committee started their commemoration early. They held a political forum in August exploring the contributions of elected officials in the Virgin Islands who also have ties to Puerto Rico. Now they're inviting the community to an upcoming art show that's happening on Friday, next Friday, October 19th at the VI Council on the Arts. There will be music and even maybe some coquito. Here's more.
Mr. Enzo Colon, who will be sharing his wonderful works on canvas. And we have from St. John, and that's Mr. Kurt G. Marsh Jr. And he is a woodcrafts prodigy. He's a young man who has been doing excellent wood turning work in a variety of objects, from urns to bowls, you know, and other creative forms. So all of this will be on display and up for discussion with both exhibitors.
There are many people like myself who come from Puerto Rican ancestry but were born in the Virgin Islands. You practice the Puerto Rican culture, but when you are out in the community, you are a native. You feel for your people, you are a native, you know the culture. As I said, maybe more in St. Croix than here, but I found many people here too that are born here and may do like some of us that speak both languages, or we speak Spanglish, right?
There you go. Make sure you're able to come to that event. Meanwhile, VIA, the largest telecommunications and cable provider in the territory, recently announced a new chief executive. Starting in November, Geraldine Pitt will take the helm of the company following the upcoming departure of the company's current CEO, Alvaro Pilar. Pitt's most recent work in the telecommunications industry was in St. Lucia as the CEO of Southern Cluster for cable and wireless communications. She was lead planner and strategist for the company's Line brand in Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and Dominica. Pitt also served as the general manager in St. Lucia, directing the company's day-to-day operations on the island. VIA is the parent company of TV2. Meanwhile, coming up next, we'll introduce you to our Pet of the Week, plus your News 2 AccuWeather forecast. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Time for our Pet of the Week. A beautiful dog who's just the right size. That's what Debbie, our Pet of the Week, has got going for her. She was a stray who found her way to the shelter, and now she's looking for her forever home. Donna Nemeth, the Director of Operations at the Humane Society of St. Thomas, tells us all about Debbie.
She's about 2 years old, super athletic, playful young dog. She would love to be in a family that's going to take her to the beach, take her running, take her out wherever they're going on their activities. You know, she's kind of an average-looking dog, but she's very sweet and pretty and good size, you know. If you can say that about a dog, you're the perfect size dog. Not too big, not too small. She's great with other dogs. We've taken her out with a lot of big groups to the box bar and out on walks. She's already been spayed, and she is looking for her forever home.
Now remember, if you or anyone you know is interested in any of the pets that we feature on Pet of the Week, don't hesitate to call the Humane Society of St. Thomas. That's 775-0599, or visit www.hsstt.com. The Humane Society also offers a free spaying and neutering program where you can take your dog or cat to a vet of your choice with a voucher from the shelter. You can help the society by fostering or adopting the rescue animals, by donating supplies, or if you're you're traveling by volunteering to transport their pets to a mainland home or shelter that will take them in. Again, that's 775-0599 or www.hsstt.com. And now let's see what the weather looks like in the next several days with your News 2 AccuWeather forecast.
Good evening. We're remaining wet here across the U.S. Virgin Islands as well as Puerto Rico. You can see on the current satellite plenty of activity as you head further to the west, but some of that moisture is being sheared back in towards Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as in towards the leewards, and that's going to continue to be the case until the weekend. Then we'll notice some of that moisture beginning to let on off. And then watching our trade winds pick back up. That means we'll still remain in a pretty showery pattern for the next several days. Current satellite, a closer look here, some activity popping in and out. And once again, the whole motion of this being sheared, some of that moisture in towards our area. Current radar, plenty of chances for wet conditions. And we see that moisture just streaming along, some of it missing us, some of it actually getting onto the island, and that's what we have to watch out for as we continue through tonight. Wet conditions, showery weather with a low of 78 degrees. As we continue into tomorrow, we're topping off at 86, but the clouds and the moisture are still going to be available for St. John as well as St. Thomas with a high of 86 and topping off in the upper 80s for St. Croix as well. Definitely going to need the umbrellas if you plan to be outdoors, and definitely going to be a wet day here. Most times we can get away with some sunshine, but those consistent bands, as we saw being pushed back into our area due to the wind flow, are going to continue. Now, in terms of your marine forecast, we do have a small craft use caution out. Waves are running up to 4 feet. Winds out of the southeast 10 to 15 knots. That's on the Atlantic side, and we also have a small craft use caution in effect for the Caribbean side. Waves running up to 6 feet and winds out of the east 10 to 15 knots. As for your extended forecast, ready for the weekend, we're kicking it off with wet weather Sunday. A bit better here, a little less active, a little less frequent, but the trade winds will stay very dominant into your midweek, and that means a chance for spotty showers and clouds. Temperatures won't be changing much, remaining in the upper 80s for your highs.
Thank you for that. Stick around. News 2 Sports with Gary Anthony is coming up next.
I'm Gary Anthony, and this is News 2 Sports. Going right to the NFL, and sorry New York Giant fans, but any hopes of making the postseason ended last night versus the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. It got ugly early. Eli Manning with the early INT, which leads to Carson Wentz's touchdown. Eagles take the early lead. Still in the first quarter, Clemens with a 2-yard touchdown run. The Eagles are now up 14-3. More Eagles. Wentz to tight end Zach Ertz. 21-6 Eagles, and the romp is on. The single bright spot for the G-men, rookie running back Saquon Barkley, who ran past, over, and around the Eagles' D to a tune of 130 yards. But it's the Eagles that soared to a 34-13 win and dropped the Giants to 1-5 and out of contention in the NFC East. That's it for sports. Have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you for that, Gary, and that's it for our show tonight. Make sure you follow us on Facebook at News2VI or Instagram at TV2USVI. We want to hear from you, so tag us on any stories you want to see on the news or send us a message on Messenger. You can also email us at newsdirector@tv2.vi. Thanks again for joining us on News 2 Week in Review. I'm April Knight. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful weekend.